I love delving into that because it takes us out of our everyday lull in which we believe very differently than that. We get caught up in the singularity perspective, like it's just little me trudging through my life and trying to make do. And we pop into a completely different world. In fact, in this book, it points out, the researcher that is a noeticist points out that when we're on LSD or these other substances that are meant to bring about what's called a God experience, a merged experience where we're one with everything, that is the truer reality. The world we live in that we think is reality is actually where we're blocking so much of that out that we don't have that full experience in our everyday lives.
No, we don't want to believe that what is called the supernatural in a way that makes fun of things is real. In fact, the supernatural is the basis of our being. In fact, as Jeff Kripal goes through in his new book, 2022, The Superhumanities, all of these stories that you read in the religious and spiritual traditions, many of them are based in actual abilities that people had around healing and telepathy and weather magic. I don't know about levitation. I'm going to think yes on super strength, but that's the actual thing. So I wrote a review of a book called Practical Magic by Mitch Horowitz for the Quest, which is the Theosophical Society's journal. And I have a line in there that goes something like, either you know, there are two kinds of people. One type believes that mind doesn't directly interact with matter, and that time is really always linear, and that it's impossible for consciousness to reside other than in an incarnated animal being in real time. And the other kind of people knows that none of those are true. And that's why Dean Radin writes so brilliantly when he'll just say psi, PSI, psychic ability and phenomena, and sensory perception, what we call psi is word category, and magic are the same. And Dean will just go out and say, it's the same thing. Let me translate it for you. And so either you know that the supernormal reality is what exists at a deeper level, and in some sense this reality is rising out from it, or is, as opposed to the view in the West, generally where this is all one big material device, a construction, like a clock or an engine. And it all starts at that physical level. If you're a Hindu, you believe that the world is a huge story that's on telling, that there are principalities and powers involved, and it's much more like a story than it is like a clock or a mechanism. But there's no question that reductionistic materialism has been super successful since around 1600. The problem is it's been too successful to the point where we've been de-enchanted, because as soon as you start talking about this kind of thing, depending on your business situation or your social situation, at a certain point, unless you're with people who are really open-minded, a large majority of the population is going to think you're kind of nuts and that you don't know what you're talking about and that you're a simpleton or that you're a full-on idiot. And I get all of that sometimes.
Well, I'm going to say you're in a space right now where I think there tends to be a lot of common ground, a lot of openness to these concepts, which is why we get to discuss them here with full openness and held in love. We don't have to be in discord with anybody, because I think people are drawn here who are curious and want to make sense of the world in this way that is this non-physical reality that we're talking about, and even how we frame it, right? So you're talking about a lot of concepts here. Let's just look at one for a moment that I love, which Hendricks talks about in his book, The Genius Zone, if you know that. It's a very accessible book for how to really live from this place where you're living from your best self. And one of the things he talks about I love is this difference between the Newtonian concept of time and the Einstein concept of time. So you touched on that, Jordan. So the Newtonian concept is that time is linear, there's only so much, there's 24 hours in a day, and that's a construct that we've created, humanity, that's not true, and it's been disproven. And so now Einstein talks about this, and in his book, Gay Hendricks talks about how we can put that into practice in our lives. So this is now going from the theoretical to the practical. If you've ever been rushing around and you're going to be late to an appointment and you're worried about disappointing somebody, you're not going to show up on time, or you feel like you simply don't have enough hours in the day to get everything done, that feeling, it feels anxiety provoking, right? And you really believe it because you're looking at the clock and counting down. So that's now being in the Newtonian mindset around time. The way to shift that is to relax into, I have plenty of time. I own time. Time doesn't own me. I own time. I create time. And it gives examples of talking to somebody, figuring it was for sure going to be late, and then dropping that anxiety and getting into a mindset, no, actually, I create time. Didn't even look at his watch and showed up a few minutes early for a meeting. Was in fact the first one there. So I invite you to try this on in your life if you ever find that you're rushing around feeling an absence of time or a lack of enough time, to shift your mindset to one of, I have plenty of time. In fact, I own time. Let me just slow it down right now and get into a super relaxed state around time. Everything will unfold perfectly. And then see what shifts in your life. It can be, I've tried this out for myself because I forget as well and I get caught up. And it's incredible how quickly that shift can take hold. And literally, I get confirmation that I indeed do own time. It doesn't own me. That's the old construct of time, the Newtonian concept or construct that has been disproved. So that's one little example to bring the theoretical to the practical, because I think that's a really important thing that happens here in this work is doing that. Yeah, Jordan, you wanted to add something?
Well, only I have had issues with time my whole life. I want people to be on time, and I hate it when I'm not on time. And sometimes people make me late for other things, which drives me crazy. And I was thinking what you were saying about just trying to let it go and it'll be okay. And I'm wondering, sometimes those kind of things do happen, and all of a sudden everything shifts and all this works out. But I was thinking that underneath that, there's an even higher level of not just that you're on time, but you have to own the ability to affirm yourself, regardless of what's going on in the exterior physical world, regardless if you made a mistake or you're sick or people have disappointed you. I mean, it's ultimately up to you at the deeper level to own the place from which the anxiety is coming from. You're somehow thinking you're wrong or not enough because you could have failed on some level. So instead of doing that, if you could really own the place of you that is ultimately responsible for acknowledging and approving of yourself, then that's another way of getting past that.
Yes, sometimes we have these voices, these loops going that we don't even realize that are putting ourselves down or making meaning from an old program that puts us down in some way. So absolutely, that's a part of it, is taking back our power by seeing through the lens of our wisest self, which is always loving. So any one of those critical voices is a conditioned voice. It is not the real one. It feels real, that inner critic. And yet, if we shift focus into our inner knowing, we know that's false in an instant. We know that's an old programming, maybe from childhood or whatever it may be. So coming back into the present moment is another way we can, if we're fully present, we can observe ourselves. And I think that's another thing that's such a powerful tool, is when we're present to ourselves, we can have this little inner dialogue that says, oh, I see, I'm down on myself in this moment. And that's an old conditioning. Oh, and that doesn't serve me. For sure, that's not my wisdom coming through. That's another part of me. So let me attune to that part of myself. How do I want awareness. And then when I ask myself, how does love want to move through me this moment? Or whatever the question is, bring me back to looking through this place where I access a deeper sense of reality of my authentic self. So this is about now an access point where I reach a truer reality. That's not reality, that I'm not good enough. That's a false notion born of conditioning this lifetime. And this is why I love movies like The Matrix and Everything Everywhere All at Once, because they are about this concept that when we take off the construct and we get to the core essence of who we are, it's so much more. It's very different. It's a deeper reality that is pure presence, that is love, and it's a very different way to move through the world. So as many times as we can set ourselves into a new habit to attune to that part of ourselves, we can bring ourselves into the way where we are, what's the term again, Jordan? Unconflicted
behavior.
We can be in unconflicted behavior because we're not letting those other unconscious voices, because we're not fully present to ourselves, get in the way. So being into full presence, then getting into the observer mind or the witness. What the heck's going on right now? And do I need to reset, regroup, refocus? What part is leading?
It's a really good conversation. You're a really good coach. And every time I get into the coach, I can feel dripping onto all of us here who are listening. It's great.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean,
joy is very hard to come by whenever you're going through something like this. But Maisie smiled through the whole thing. She has shown us that even though you're going through something terrible, you can still enjoy your life. You can still do fun things. You can still.
I've learned or what people would want to know, that kind of thing. Relationship other than conversation. Maybe that this was great. Put out 2/3 of the words. Now make it just decide what to do about it. I think this has one thing. It definitely involves your awareness becoming conscious of itself and how it's working. And you can come into presence and become conscious of your consciousness or aware of how you become aware of your awareness or consciousness at any moment when, as most of us take the breath and intention and intention of the gatekeepers, but you can actually access the light within you at any moment and realize that it's always been there and that whatever conscious mechanism has always been part of you, and you have that ability to do that at any moment in your life. You don't have to buy anything or do a technique or take drugs or, take notes or anything like that in particular. It's just the ability and willingness to slow down enough to feel that your consciousness is interacting with the material world as well as other people. Your mind does interact with matter and shapes it and things it. And really in that time not being linear. And I definitely think it's going backwards and forwards in time. I feel like that's washing backwards in time all the time. Not just for sure about the other direction, but it's certainly not just linear. And recognizing that, you're the very core of the kind of hyper magical process that's always going on in real time. You can drop into it at any moment with your breath. It seems very simple.
Yeah, beautiful to be able to pare it down, simplify. That's what I like as well, is simple language, accessible share how many you are invited to unlock the power of your inner wisdom. All are invited. Raise your hand and come on up at any time if you've got a question about any situation in your life, or you're looking for clarity, or you simply want to respond to something that's been said here, or have a new direction you'd like to take things and explore together. I'm here for you. I'm on every Saturday, starting at 8:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, and I go for up to 2 hours, so we're 1 hour in today. And I'm very happy to have you just hang out and listen if that's what you're doing today. Or if you want to come on up and be part of the conversation, I'd love to have you join us. And so I'll always know you have something to say if you unmute or if you raise your hand and come on up. Except in your case, I'm so sorry.
This holiday, give the gift of music. Save 25% on a loved one's first 4 lessons. Grab a gift card in-store to take advantage of these savings, or get them signed up at guitarcenter.com/lessons today.
Do not get a consolidation loan until you see this. Hey, Mario Lopez here, and if you're thinking about getting a consolidation loan to combine your credit card debts or your personal loan debts into one, then there are 3 things that you should know. Number one, many people don't qualify for consolidation loans, especially now with tighter lending standards. 2, even if you do qualify, you still have to pay back everything you owe. 3, there's a little known way to consolidate your debt. You may qualify for where you don't have to pay back all you owe, and you can lower your monthly debt payments. I recently discussed how this works with a financial expert. To learn more, just keep watching this video. Hey, Lynette, I saw you on Oprah where you were talking about money issues. Do you remember that?
Hey, Mario, yes, that was a great episode. I think it really helped a lot of people.
I'm sure it did.
What are you working on right now? Well, I'm actually working on a special project that reveals the 2-word secret people can use to reduce their credit card debts by half and lower their monthly payments.
A lot of people have benefit from that. What's the 2-word secret?
Well, it's called debt.
So we are all part of the same thing, and then our construct in our conditioned existence starts to fall apart, because time isn't linear after all, even though we're sure it is every day when we look at our phones a million times a day. And things aren't just real that are tangible and physical, but in fact, it is the non-physical reality that creates our tangible physical world. So the world can seem upside down when we take off the filters that we have been conditioned to believe our whole lives. And I think there's a growing number of people who want to take off those filters and understand, how does life really work? How does the world really, the universe for that matter, really operate? And these are the deep questions being researched. There's a ton of research now about things that are still taught. This is still poo-pooed, a lot of these beliefs, but there's really strong scientific research now by Dean Radin, who Jordan mentioned, and others who are doing serious scientific inquiry to look at consciousness. And so if you want more information about that, check out the website for the Institute of Noetic Sciences, and even sign up for the talk. It's free. You don't have to be a member to go to this free talk, I believe. It's going to be next Friday, where Dean Radin, the chief scientist, interviews Dan Brown, who wrote this book that's out now, Secret of Secrets, where he talks about all of this vast consciousness, and he mentions Dean Radin, and even the book that Dean just published is mentioned in this other book. So this is worlds colliding in the best possible way, where you can have entertainment discussing these more complex concepts that are a deeper sense of reality. And even what was touched upon earlier by Jordan, mentioning the placebo effect. That's us getting into, in a way, a non-conflicted behavior, right? When we believe something is real, we can be given a sugar pill and it can be just as effective as the medicine with the supposed active ingredient. The biggest active ingredient we have is in us. It's our consciousness when we get out of the way. and make room for all that's possible in our limitless nature, it's really to our limitless nature, then incredible things happen. Okay, Joe, I'm trying to call you up as well.
Dr. Sharon, can I ask you a question?
Please go ahead.
So, Time Warner, Netflix is doing this $80 billion Discovery deal, and it's a communications corporation. People are concerned about it. My question is, a lot of people have content addiction, but it's not giving them contentment, meaning that they're doom scrolling, they're watching Netflix 8 hours a day. So that's time control and that's mind control. And I know you said you worked with Thich Nhat Hanh. I have some Thich Nhat Hanh CDs, and I was listening to one in my car the other day, and he called it the 4-pebble meditation. I am a mountain. I am space. I am free. Like these positive affirmation, these neurolinguistic little meditation programs to give us contentment. Clown House is a very small audience. I'm just saying, like, how do we, liberate mankind through Discovery and Netflix?
Yeah, it's such a relevant question, isn't it, in our culture? In fact, this was a few years back, I went to a meetup. It was a conversation that largely was about this very thing, and it was a fascinating room because you had up on the stage unicorns and spiritual leaders both. And this was a Wisdom 2.0 event. If anybody's familiar with Wisdom 2.0, it's an organization that bills itself as where business meets mindfulness. So they bring together those two concepts. And there were these tech billionaires saying we have a real problem, similar to what you're just saying, music. And there was somebody sitting next to me that was a professor from my alma mater, Institute of Transpersonal Psychology, where we studied consciousness and psychology. And we looked at each other and we were just like, why don't you just turn off your fucking phone? Like, why is this so difficult? And so we've had to build in a lot of features into our devices, do not disturb and all of this, because we seem to be very Pavlovian in that, there's a sound that goes off and we stop what we're doing and we look at the phone, right? Or Netflix puts us on autoplay, and by default, I think. Now they've changed that where you can turn that off, right? So that you don't constantly go from one thing to the next thing. So we have many things out there in our culture that can prey upon our addictive nature in a way. Fast food's another one, things that are kind of sleazy that are built in to prey upon our human frailties, let's put it that way. And so I think the antidote to that is the more we can get present in the moment, we can not be on autopilot and just binge watch the next episode. We can say, oh, wait a minute, let me put pause on here and take it off autoplay, and let me get up and stretch and think about how I really want to be spending my time right now. So it's ultimately up to each one of us, and we want society to be responsible and to not set us up for failure, right? But really, we're the ultimate people, the ultimate ones who make that decision for ourselves. No matter what gets thrown in our path, we can say, I'm taking a tech break, whatever it might be. But it deserves our attention and our thought, I think, each one of us, knowing we each have our own ways of operating. We each have our own strengths and our own weaknesses or challenges. And so knowing that, only we fully understand them for ourselves, then we can sit for a moment and devise some ways that we are going to get ourselves out of autopilot we live in today. And I know some people will take a complete break for a day or a week or something. And other people will put their phone on silent, whatever it might be. That it's worthy of some thought and some strategizing, don't you think? To make our own plan for how we're gonna not make that be the justification for us being further habituated in a cycle of autopilot where we're not fully present. We're just letting the world kind of invade and take over us. That's only happening because we're letting it. So how do we not let that happen, right? Anytime I'm listening to a friend who's frantic and agitated, describing the latest news cycle, I say, "Oh, you've been listening to the news or watching the news again, haven't you?" And they're like, "Yes." I say, "Well, come out." So I'm not tune into the news cycle because it's bad news is considered newsworthy. I mean, it just is. So you don't hear a lot of good news. And there's plenty of good news happening on the planet at any given time, but it's not considered worthy of the sensationalism that will drive up the viewers, etc. So those are my thoughts. Music.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny is like if you liberate mankind through Netflix by giving them enlightenment wisdom, you destroy Netflix because people will turn the tube off. So, they have a catch-22s. They don't want to give you the secret message to essentially disconnect you from their platform. But that's what would theoretically happen, even though it probably wouldn't, because people are addicted to content. And I have this book on psychoanalysis and therapy and yoga and TM, transcendental meditation. And it says that in the 80s, the Neurolinguistic Programming Association declared that all communication is hypnosis. So this Pavlovian bell ringing and saliva drilling and our cell phone activation, it's all hypnosis, it's all communication. So that mindful awareness of the power of communication to control us, that breaks the power of it once you're aware of that. That problem, which is not a problem. I think it's a content problem, not it's not a problem. It's just the content that people are consuming is causing them psychological problems, emotional problems, propagandistic problems. And so I love what you're doing. I love hypnosis, and I believe in the power of it because it's content, and people need contentment. Thich Nhat Hanh was the master of peace. That type of psychology, that type of understanding, if we don't get people like that in government, we're doomed, because there's nothing to fear but fear itself. The debt and all these cataclysmic issues that are driving people crazy through the news cycle can be dealt with, but they have to be dealt with that awareness and presence.
Yeah, I think, first of all any of us can do is turn out and vote. And that's our power in terms of our elected leadership. But the other thing is to find our peace. It is really an internal practice to tune inward. We all get to achieve that. No matter what's going on externally in our environment, we all get to tune in and choose peace and access that for ourselves. So my choice to not be very connected at all with the news cycle is my strategy to help me easily delve into that peace from within. And I just want to acknowledge, okay, there's a couple of people who have their hands up, and it seems to not be working today at all for some people to get called up here. I don't know why that is. So I'm sorry about that. But you're all invited to try. Raise your hand at any time, and I will invite you up, and I will hope that it can work. So it's worked some of the time, but not all the time today. Sometimes that's when there is a new version of this app. It's worth it to go, okay, Garish, I'm inviting you to speak. Oh, there you're up. Okay.
Private student loan debt wrecking your life. You really need to talk to Why Refi. Why Refi? Refinance is me sitting in meditation, meditating.
A meditative question?
No, I'm the picture I'm explaining about the picture. It is my meditative posture. Like the place I used to meditate.
Yes.
It's the picture of that. I like anime a lot. Like I'm a fan of anime. Japanese anime.
Yes.
I do animate myself.
Oh, okay, I love it. Okay. So this is you in anime.
Yeah, I'm a character. I'm building up, as I said, like many things. So, like I'm working on a creative project. And I'm trying to be original, like not to copy anything, like start fresh, like with characters. Collecting a lot of data, but yeah, like I'm putting on myself right now. Bit of, like because for laws of the universe, like the universe till the democratic laws, like trying myself, best version of my.
Wasting the time.
Namaste.
I thought like a constant is something divine, like if you put it in an equation like something like constant, like if you quantum physics, there is something called theory of evolution, like the latest, the one that was a great mathematician was C.V. Raman, you might have heard of him.
Say his name again?
C.V. Raman.
C.V. Raman?
C.V. Raman.
C.V. Raman. Okay, I'm not familiar. He was a great mathematician.
He's the one who gave equation to the black hole, like.
Oh, okay.
He started off with divine intuition. He said he was a little, still temple boy, like he used to visit some Devi, some divine feminine temple. And then like he used to come home and write everything in mathematics and equations. Like till now nobody has reached up to him. Like he's the best in the world. And the ancient goes like Aryabhatta, the inventor of zero. The Roman number, anything like that was there. But Indian Aryabhatta is called the father of mathematicians of Indian culture. Yeah, like he gave the zero.
Well, this is a good name to know, isn't it? Okay.
Yeah, astronomy. There was a whole lot of, like they call Nalanda University. It was the biggest world center for education. Like everybody in the ancient time, not it's like 1,000 years, like before colonization, like everything happened. Then India had this PR state, and it was called the master of the keepers of the everything, like secret to the astrology, name it, everything, like it's like ChatGPT, Google search. It knows everything, like every knowledge. There was teacher, there was like Gurukul, there used to be an ashram called Gurukul, like right after the primary, like after the child gets like some age, like I don't remember, but they put into the homeschooling, like they put to the group. And even like we had visitors all over the world, like the ancient, as you can go, like even like Buddha, like traveled, and it was like there is many Buddhas, infinite Buddhas, and like infinite, like the divine essence, like it is self-illuminating. Self-illuminating. Like they ancient god associated with the times of India, Bharat. They like, especially the root goes to Shiva. The Shiva is the, what they call Adi Yogi. Like if you know Sadhguru, like he talks about Shiva. And yeah, I resonate well with my name. My name is also called Girish and Shiva. Like who sits on the mountain and meditate. Yeah, it is all the connection.
So you've taken your name to heart.
My name was my father and mother named. My father actually named me. It is according to the astrological thing, we have a whole lot of, even up to the tribal, from tribal people, every village, every town, every city, every society had its own, what you call Grama Devata, means the protector of the land, it's tiny, tiny pieces, and it has evolved so much that the main deity, Trinity deity we worship, and the origin of everything is like Shiva Shakti, the Indian Yang, and the masculine and feminine. But there is so many names, and we all named after gods, and sometimes some people named after some, they wanted some baby, then they don't get, and the name of the Shiva. Then we all mention other Shiva name is like Sahasranama, if you go through internet and search for this Sahasranama, there is like Shiva Sahasranama, like 1,000 names of the Shiva, 1,000 names of the Vishnu, Lalita Sahasranama. It is very vast, and I think ChatGPT can do a good work. If we are the England, like in the English people stole all the tricks and manipulated, and it's gone to the US, and then it is coming back to the market in the highest possible youth society. So it is all coming back. We might have given up all that.
Wait, I want to stop you. I want to stop you for a second, Girish. I want to come back. I want to go back to something you said at the beginning, if I might, and then we can return here. Is that okay? You started out on a different track. You were talking about how you purposely turn off the media because you can see that it's not good for you, right? And this is what music is talking about also, is that the quality of it that sort of takes us down this rabbit hole where we don't want to go, and the addictive nature of it, right? So I just wanted to touch on that for a moment and look through the lens of addiction, because it's rampant globally. I think every culture, right? And it's not just about media and news, it's about anything you can imagine, right? Around drugs and alcohol and sex and gambling, any pornography, anything that people do to their detriment, where it's not serving them, it's causing harm to themselves and others, and they can't seem to pull themselves out of it. That's what we would call an addiction. And it's the huge sort of shadow side of our culture, very, very common. And so what is the source of it, and how do we get ourselves out of that? Because it's much more than turning off autoplay on Netflix, right, to get out of that. So the core of addiction is numbing the pain of feeling the disconnect. And so let me say that again. The core of addiction is to numb the pain of feeling the disconnect. And so the remedy for that is to tune in deeply to ourselves and to the vast consciousness, vast intelligence, and attune ourselves to our Buddha nature, which is what you came around to in the end, is the Buddha nature. And we all have a Buddha nature. There's a saying, everyone's the Buddha, they just don't know it. It's to awaken to our Buddha, and that's, Jordan was alluding to that earlier, that we all can be enlightened in any moment, and that is turning our attention to our inner light, our inner knowing. And when we are one with that part of ourselves, now we bring ourselves into a kind of alignment where we're no longer disconnected, and we bring ourselves into a place of connection. And now connection can be beyond that to other people. But the primary connection is really knowing that we are one with everything in the universe. I think that's the primal wound that happens in our culture, especially for those who have believed the conditioning that we've all gotten, that we are all separate beings just trying to fumble around. And there can be, people say there's a loneliness epidemic. Same thing. It comes from not tuning in to this part of ourselves that knows we are always a part of everyone and everything, that we are one. That is the nature of consciousness. When we drop into that state of being, whether it's sitting and meditating like you talk about, Jerish, or whatever practice anybody here, anybody in the world may have, that brings them into that state where now I'm in the true reality, which is that I am one with everyone and everything at all times. It brings us into our light, and there is no room from that perspective for disconnect, and there to numb anything out, because everything feels good and right in our world. And isn't that how we want to live?
Dr. Sharon, can I just say that, if all is one, then our communication should be one-to-one. Unfortunately, people that have conflict and friction in their life, they're not doing one communication.
The only person we're truly responsible for is ourselves. So we are each part of that vast intelligence. So anytime, we can't talk anybody into anything, right? Nor should we try to. It's not our responsibility. I mean, I look at the state of the world as consciousness, kind of a microcosm. Which means that there is part of this consciousness that is not fully awake, and it comes out when you see individuals who are operating in disconnect. They're doing harm to themselves or to others, or
This holiday,
and we all
give the gift of
kind
music.
of can go in and
Save
out of that, whether
25%
it's
on the
emotional
loved ones
harm to
first
ourselves because we're believing some old critical story about ourselves, whatever it might be. This task is to remember to stay in that state for ourselves. We want that for everybody, music, so I understand what you're saying. We want everybody to feel that feeling. And yet, whether people show up that way or not, it doesn't impact our ability to show up that way for ourselves. We often use it as our reasoning, but the truth is we all have access at any time, regardless of what anybody else is doing. And that is our wordless invitation to invite others to join us in that vibration, that frequency of love. When we show up that way, it's an energy to energy, a spirit to spirit connection that is so much more powerful than any tool we can talk to anybody about. And I love your passion for hypnosis music, and keep doing what you're doing, because clearly it is what you're meant to be doing. And so that's true for any of us. We have our own bubbles of brilliance within us that are part of this larger intelligence. And so anytime we're tuned into that for ourselves, we are beaming that out into humanity, into the universe. So we are so much more powerful than we realize. We don't have to talk anybody into anything. We just need to show up in our full, beautiful, radiant presence. That is it. If that is what our focus is in every day, to show up that way for ourselves and for the world, we are on purpose completely in our lives. The rest is gravy. Great, you have a special talent for X, Y, or Z. Go and do that. That brings you even more into alignment. But it's not because we're talking anybody into anything. So those are my thoughts.
Every time you said "make me one with," everything, I was thinking of that really silly cartoon where you have a monk buying a hot dog and he says, "make me one with everything." I don't know. That's always in my mind.
Wait, and what happens?
So a monk is at a hot dog vendor on the street. He goes up and the caption is just "make me one with everything."
Oh, with the hot dog. Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah, for some reason, when I hear those set of words, I always, how that happens sometimes, you just kind of always think of certain visual gags or jokes.
Yeah, that's very funny. I hadn't seen that one.
Is there something about people don't want to be in their most enlightened or high self or super conscious state because they're afraid there will be more there than they can handle, or that it's really not so good, and if there's illness or emotional difficulties, or what do you think? Why do you think people don't more easily use their breath and attention to access the state of presence?
Yeah, it's a big question. I think some people simply aren't aware that even is something that exists, that is possible, that they can do. Really locked into this little box of belief around who we are and what we're capable of. So I think we can have our own sets of limiting beliefs. And yes, I think fear is a huge part of that. Fear is conditioned into us for our survival as humans. So it's very ironic, right? Spirit that is funneled through human form, that has by design fear built into us so we will survive. So then we have to learn which fear serves us and which gets in our way. And that's a whole process, right? For those who are on a path of awakening. So
you can't be on the path of awakening without also being on a path that will have you in fear. I'm thinking now of Carl Jung. Carl Jung in his 14-year period of doing, active imagination and basically being on the edge of insanity, which is how he came up with the Red Book. That's his record of that. And all you have to do is look at the pictures and you get how way out, he was with these paintings he was doing there. But his point is that, in part, that you actually have to be willing to go to the level of the archetypes, to the gods of the underworld, basically, and actually, parlay with them, look them in the eye, realize that's just, I don't know what you do when you're actually there, but you have to do that. And a lot of people don't want to do that. They don't want to go in that deep. And indeed, it really literally almost did drive Jung completely mad, and which is why they, kept the book out of circulation until the third generation of the family trust came into power. And they said, no, we got to publish this thing. It's too valuable. But, I think I'll speak for myself. I think to some degree, I am definitely afraid of some of what I might experience to be true if I sort of just stay in an enlightened state. And, beg the question of what exactly that means, but something like that.
Do you think it's because it would deconstruct you? You are this constructed Jordan human being, and in a way it would disintegrate the construct. This is what happened to me.
Shadows break the fleeting light. The truth of truth, it waits. It waits. Oh, the truth of truth, it's deeper still. Beneath the waves, beyond the hill. They call it whispers in the night. The shadows break the fleeting
The stuff
light.
that being being human is made of. I think one of the questions a lot of people have is, why am I here? If I have a belief that I am spirit in human form, why am I here? What was I put into human form to do? And the arc of being spirit born in a human vessel is to have the full expression of being a human, only then to learn how to shed that, to be what some people would call enlightened, to shed that and know that I am a part of it all. I'm not actually an individual construct after all, but the arc of that is going through the full human experience in order to get there. And so this is the next step on the journey. Jerry, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Do you have a comment or a question? And where are you tuning in from today, if I can ask?
Boston area.
Boston, okay. I'm tuning in from California, San Francisco Bay Area. Great to have you here.
Yeah, nice to be here.
What's on your mind?
Yeah, I was listening to the most recent thing, as well as others. And I think you're right. It's what I've experienced myself is that there's a point at which there's this underlying or hidden fear of losing what's familiar when it comes to going deeper and deeper. I've had these moments of, how to describe it, getting closer to what I think is the truest seeing of myself, and there's this reflexive feeling of pulling back from it, and I think this is what it is. This is that, as painful as duality is, it's still familiar, and you have experience, and you can deal with it. And also with respect to what you were saying earlier, when it comes to fear being evolutionary, I think this is pure speculation, but as we've evolved, I'm of the opinion that at some point in history, we not only use symbolism, words, etc., to for communication, etc., but at some point, and my guess, so at some point we attach to that symbolism, creating like a second reality. And I would say that I heard one time that people who believe in the Bible said something about the Bible says that Earth has been around for 6,000 years or something like that, something in that area. And I remember thinking to myself, wow, that to me sounds like it could have been the point at which humans started attaching to symbols and beliefs. And so, just to throw that out there for the conversation. And then the last thing I was just going to say that, I see fear as actually holding us back, not helping us at any point in our evolution. Because, if I'm not fearful, I'm still intelligent. And I know enough that if I run away from a tiger or a saber-tooth tiger, then I'll get to continue in this particular realm that Spirit has chosen. So, I don't think fear. I think we're okay despite fear, and not because of fear. That's my two cents.
If you didn't fear the tiger though, and you went up to pet it, it might devour you. You might not make the decision to get out of there. You know.
Right. Well, if I know the nature of a tiger, I'm intelligent enough not to pet it. You know.
I suppose that's true. Yeah. Yeah. Well, certainly when we can differentiate between a fear that's getting in our way and one that is maybe helping us out. I know you don't think any fear helps us out, but certainly if we can at any point make a decision because we're able to tune in, because we're present and we're observing ourselves, and we're able to identify that fear is very much leading in a way that's not serving us, then we can choose at will. And this is something many people, I think most people do not realize. We can shift our conscious attention at will to another part of ourselves. So we can learn to shift our attention, our conscious awareness to our wisdom, to our inner knowing, and not let fear continue to lead. But in order to do that, we have to be present to ourselves. We have to observe what's happening. We have to identify what fear feels like and decide in that moment to shift awareness, because we know we can. So knowing that we have that ability, and then learn, how do I shift into a mode that really serves me? How do I shift into that radiant light, that my Buddha nature, my authentic self, my inner knowing, my wisdom, whatever you want to call it? Then our ways, and some people have different ways for doing that, of shifting at will our attention and our awareness into that other part, to let that part lead. That is the active practice that I believe the more we cultivate, the more it becomes like breathing, and we can live more and more that way in the world. And then perhaps it becomes something a little less to fear. And I get what you're saying, Jerry and Jordan, too, about the fear coming in of maybe losing ourselves, like Jung was doing. But I will say this, I don't think that everybody has the same path. I think it's different for each of us has our own path and our own way. It doesn't have to go down a dark hole like for Jung. Maybe he believed that was what has to happen, but I've heard many times throughout my life, I've heard very learned people say, here's how it has to happen. You have to be part, for instance, you have to be part of a spiritual tradition to really unfold into an awakening. And when you're ready, the teacher will find you. Okay, these are things I have heard from very learned people. And I'm just going to tell you, I've come to realize that it's not true. It's not true at all. There are many ways the information can come to us, and we don't have to be part of a particular tradition. So for as many beautiful leaders as there are out there, I've heard many of them say, oh, there's only one true way to get there. And that always is a red flag to me. Anytime anybody says there's only one way, and by the way, it's this way that I happen to know. So I just encourage everybody to stay open to your own pathway, because it just may not even be what you've been taught, even by grounded, learned, spiritual leaders. I mean, everybody has filters on. We just do. And so that's why I come back again and again to, when we learn how to tune into our own truth, there we can anchor in. No matter what anybody else is saying or doing around us, we can make a choice that attunes us to our radiance, our light, our Buddha nature, anytime we choose. And it's not going to be because we're taking in what somebody else tells us. It's because we're going to get our own inner signals that, yes, you know, I call that's true to me, or I call BS on that. That's That's not true at all. And so this is what, when we learn to pay attention to that, we have only to follow the breadcrumbs, you know? So again, looking at the fear that can take hold, that's projection into the future, right? Of this is what can happen. And the more we stay into, let's just follow the breadcrumbs in the present moment, it's a beautiful path to walk, because I don't have to have any worry or concern about the future. And in fact, if I look at, coming back to earlier in our conversation today, that time is a construct, then it just may be my most beautiful life has already unfolded. And I have now only to just fully appreciate it and live it in each moment. It's already happened, so there's nothing to fear in the future. It's already happened, and I just get to be in this moment and absorb it and appreciate it and love it. And so we often can take fear and anxiety out of the mix when we get out of the past and out of the future, right? I guess that resonates with you, Jordan.
Well, plus just knowing the power of the placebo process, knowing that whatever health stuff you've got going on, if you're thinking and feeling positive thoughts and acting appropriately, it's going to be better. So you want to be present to that too, rather than, because I have had a couple little minor health scares I'm still working my way through, and it's been a practice to just kind of, let it go and be with it, and not drive myself crazy, or what's the right term, not go tripping out on it, as my friend Jeremy Hill would say. So, yeah.
What do you do? What do you do for yourself? Because now this is like this very physical, this is a physical reality for you. So how do you do that? How do you get that fear?
I have my set of techniques. I say a modified version of the litany of fear from Dune that is built around the idea of healthy multiplicity. Or I'll say one of the two Hindu mantras that I like and that have been part of this pop-up travel of Hindu altars that we've always go and travel with instead of a little altar. Or I'll just do breathwork patterns. If I'm really freaking out, I'll try to remember what the thing that Huberman says really works is, because it does seem to really work, which is that taking a really long inhale through your nose, and then when you're done with that, topping it off with as much as you can do, and then letting it very slowly out through your mouth. And I think that when I go really off balance emotionally or physically, I will just be aware enough usually at this point to do some of that. The hard part for me is when I'm falling asleep and if I'm waking up and seeing the cycles of negative rumination and finding a way to be okay with them and let them go. If you resist them, they get worse. But so and that's where the breath work or music. I'll sing. I've heard it said that you can't think while you're humming. I'm sure that's not exactly 100% true, but try it. It's an interesting experiment. It's kind of right. So just all that basic stuff, and depending on the time of day, I might do one of my more physical practices, like bouncing on the rebounder or being on the vibrating plate, or just doing some little Pilates stuff, or just doing a little Qigong. So it's changing always what I'm doing to get back on center. I've had a new problem where literally I've had some numbness and pain going down my side of my neck, and it's the same side of my neck where there's also a thyroid nodule. So and results have come back and it's still indeterminate. So I let go of worrying about that for now. But this other thing, I find that I have been twisting and torquing my neck in ways that are hurting my body, and I'm just seeing the pattern and seeing that it's almost always true that it doesn't start if I haven't been, going one way with my body and looking back the other way. And I don't know when I started doing that.
this or how it's happened. So I literally have to find a way to keep my head on straight now, which I find a great challenge. And one thing is, I keep my head down more and back. You know, I have friends who are embodiment teachers, and I know what it's supposed to look like, but I forget almost immediately. So rewiring that kind of a physical practice is a really interesting challenge, because there's no way you can always focus on something when you're also living your life. But I'm trying, because I learned when I was 40 that I was allergic to weed. Not gluten, but weed. And then I stopped completely, but it took me 10 years until I made the commitment and said, I'm done. And, I've only had it since when I made a mistake, because I know what happens. So it's, I haven't figured out yet why and how to keep basically all I have to do is keep my chin a little bit down and back and in the middle of my body. But I find myself torquing my head and looking at a screen and going one way with my body, and it's like, and I'm hurting myself, and I have to find a way to be conscious enough of that to just not do it anymore.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot that you're managing right now.
Hey, Dr.
And that you have a lot of tools.
Dr. Sharon, can I ask you about breathing? Because breathing and silence seem to be two very important therapeutic and enlightenment words. Can you maybe tell us your thoughts about breathing and the state of wordlessness or silence?
Well, some people call breath prana, or that's where our life force energy moves to us. So it's very powerful, the breath. So there is much around breath and breathing that, let me just say this. When we hold strict and shallow breathe, we're not letting in our full life force. So we're cutting off our flow. So to learn to let in full deep breaths, and this is what, Jordan, you were just talking about, that Huberman talked about one way to do that, and I know, Jordan, you've talked about another way, is the box breathing on a count of 5. 5 counts in, 5 counts hold, 5 counts out, 5 counts hold, right? I think that's what that is.
Yeah, well, actually, if you're really under physiological